They buried our pharaoh in a living shark. Now he's leaving the ocean for the stars. They don't write about the silence in the sanctioned histories. The absolute crushing silence after the chanting stops. My grandfather was a salt priest. He told me what really happened on the shores of the Red Sea, his voice a dry rasp of bone and regret. He said the texts speak of glory, of eternal life granted by the gods. He said the texts are a fucking lie. It began with Khepri-Re, the last mortal king. He felt the rot in his bones, the thinness of his blood. He saw the end of his light, and he refused to go gentle into the sand. He called the priests not for last rites, but for a blasphemy. He demanded a life beyond life. They found the beast in the deep trenches where the water is black and cold. It was ancient when the first stones of the pyramids were laid, a great white scarred with the memory of leviathans. They didn't just catch it, they bled for it. Nets of woven sinew and hooks of sharpened bone dragged it from its abyssal throne. They caged it in a drowned temple, a place of shadow and brine, and they began the work. They didn't just carve symbols into its hide, they branded them. Scribes held down the thrashing behemoth, while priests seared golden hieroglyphs of unending cycles and divine hunger into its gray skin. The smell of its burning flesh, my grandfather said, clung to the stones for a century. They took its eyes. Not with a clean cut, but with heated obsidian spoons, scooping them out like jelly. In their place, they set polished spheres of lapis lazuli, cold and dead, a vessel fit for a god. When Khepri-Re arrived, the air was thick with the scent of blood and incense. 100 of his most loyal household guard were brought to the water's edge, not slaves, his chosen. They went to their knees willingly, and the priests cut their throats. Their blood was collected in great copper basins, mixed with sacred oils, until it was a thick, shimmering crimson paste. They shoveled this paste into the shark's maw. It ate blindly. It ate without end. Then they dragged the gorged, mutilated creature onto the shore. Its gills pumped, desperate for a sea it could no longer see. Its body was a living temple of agony. This is the part my grandfather's voice would always break. They opened its mouth with bronze spears, levering the jaws apart until the cartilage screamed. Inside, it was a cavern of serrated blades. They laid Khepri-Re, wrapped in nothing but linen, onto a reed bed. He was alive. His eyes were wide open, staring at the sun he swore he would outlast. And they pushed him in, bed and all, into the hot, wet throat of the beast. They pulled the spears free. The jaws snapped shut with a sound like a mountain cracking in half. The chanting stopped. Silence. Khepri-Re was in the dark. A suffocating, living dark. He could feel the spasms of the shark's dying muscles around him, the slow grind of its digestion. Panic was a hot spike in his chest. This was not divinity. This was a tomb of flesh. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the thick walls of his sarcophagus. For days he lay there, starving, dehydrating, his mind fraying as his body decomposed in the belly of his god. He was king of nothing but his own rot. And then, a change. His fading consciousness snagged on something else. A vast, simple mind. Pure instinct, hunger, pressure, current. He was no longer just Khepri-Re. He was something more. His memories of the sunlit world became fractured dreams inside the endless, watery night of the shark's mind. The beast, dead on the rocks, was not dead. His will, his desperate, clawing ambition, had become its engine. It was a fusion. A monstrous, unholy birth. His new body stirred. It slid from the rocks, back into the sea. The priests fell to their knees. Ages passed. The Nile flooded and receded. Dynasties rose and crumbled. And with each dying king, the ritual was repeated. A fleet of gods began to patrol the deeps. They were legends whispered by foreign sailors. Sea monsters with lapis eyes and golden scars. The Sharkophagi. When the Persians came with their 1,000 ships, our priests just smiled. They went to the shore and began to chant. their voices carrying over the water. And from the depths the old kings answered. I read a captured Persian scroll once. It was a naval captain's log. The last entry was scrawled in a panicked hand. It spoke of a shadow under the waves, bigger than any whale. It spoke of a sound like splintering mountains as it tore through the hull of the flagship. It described a jaw opening wider than a temple gate, swallowing men whole. It said the creature had eyes like dead blue stars. The writing ends in a smear of what could only be blood. Persia did not fall. It was erased from the sea. Rome sent its legions, its proud triremes. Our gods of the brine met them at the mouth of the Mediterranean and broke them. The empire surrendered without a single soldier landing on our shores. We sailed west, across the great ocean, and the peoples of the new continent saw our scarred gods rise from the waves and knew they had no choice but to kneel. We turned east and swallowed the fleets of China and Japan. An empire of salt and blood, built on a promise kept in the bellies of monsters. But eternity is a long, boring cage, even for a god. They grew restless in their silent, watery kingdom. The endless hunt, the taste of blood, the crushing pressure, it wasn't enough anymore. The ambition that drove Caprire to be buried alive was not the kind to be satisfied with just one world. My grandfather told me he saw it, just before he fled the priesthood. He was on watch at the great port of Alexandria on a starless night. The water was unnaturally still. And then, one of them breached, a king of old. It shot from the water, a missile of muscle and golden-scarred flesh. But it didn't crash back down, it just kept going. Water streamed from its hide, turning to ice in the upper air. It rose, silent and immense, its dead lapis eyes fixed on the moon. It was leaving the sea behind. It was shedding its old skin, its old world. The stars are just a deeper, darker ocean. And our old gods are finally going home.